Great. Hi, Susan. I'm really thrilled to have you here join me today. Yeah, I really wanted to pick your brain, get some wisdom from your side. You had your experience in life. Obviously, you've got still a full life ahead of you, but probably the first one. If you have ever had a moment in your life that you wish you could go back and do it differently, what would that be?
Boy, that is a hard question. I think it might have been somewhere around my education. I think I wish I had learned a little bit more about psychology and science and some of those things as a part of my educational background. Other than that, even though I've had a lot of difficult things like most people do in my life, I don't think there's anything I would do differently.
Okay, why psychology in particular? Any reason?
Well, I think it's where I'm at this point in my life and the things that I'm doing. And as you know, I coach attorneys. I am an attorney, but I also coach attorneys. I wish I had more of that knowledge, that information. I'm learning sort of on my own. I'm teaching myself those kinds of things, but I wish I had more skills and knowledge in that area because I think it would equip me to be better able to help people.
Okay. And would that relate to the next question in terms of knowledge? If you had passed any particular knowledge that you have now to your younger self, what would that be? Apart, studying particular areas at school, would there be anything you would say you would want yourself to know when you were younger to do
Absolutely.
things
And
differently?
I have a 25-year-old son and I try to share these things with him. Life is an evolving process for most people. Some people are lucky and they can at 10 or 15 or whatever and say, I want to be a doctor or I want to be a lawyer. Or what. But for most people, it's a process that evolves. You try things, you figure out what you like, you figure out what you don't like, and then you can keep evolving and moving on and trying new things. You don't have to identify at a young age exactly what you're going to be doing with the rest of your life. Keep an open mind and enjoy the opportunity to try lots of things. That would be my big advice to myself, and that's what I tell my son.
So would you say that school would be the most important thing, being a young person, because we're quite pushed um, fairly quickly through the entire school process. We have to potentially,
Yeah.
or most parents advise us to get a degree because it's very important that we have a secure lifestyle. But would you say the school system is important, and would you say they teach things that are useful uh, as being an adult right now? I mean, I've seen quite a lot on online where people said, okay, we've got all that knowledge about history, about science, physics, biology, but no one has taught us how to manage money, how to handle, I don't know, pressure, for example,
Yeah.
things like that. What would you say?
Yeah.
What's your feeling about the school system? And is it really important for everyone to finish school, go to, do a degree, etc.?
I think education is important. Now, whether you get that education by going a route of going from, you know, high school into a college, into an advanced degree, or whether you decide to learn a trade or you become somebody's apprentice, I think that continually learning and working on things and gaining knowledge is really what's most valuable. I'm a little older. I came from a generation where that college degree was an absolute, you had to have that. And that's still the case in some professions. You're going to have to, if you want to be a lawyer, you're going to have to go through certain programs. If you want to be a doctor, a dentist, a veterinarian, things like that, you're going to have to, or a nurse, you're going to have to learn certain things. I do not think the curriculum in all of these programs is necessary. I think they do add in a lot of things that just don't seem to be as useful as it would be to learn about how to manage your finances and how to possibly communicate well and how to manage your emotions and your relationships with people. So I think education, whatever form it comes in, is very useful for people. And it's going to depend on what it is you want to do with your life, what form of education you get. Again, I'm going to refer back to personal experience. I have an undergraduate degree in design. I
Hmm.
was a designer for a while. And
Oh,
then I
great.
did a whole bunch of other things. I went back to school. I became a lawyer. And then I went and after I was a lawyer, I learned how to be a coach. So it's a constant, what do I want to do? What do I need to bring to the table in order to do that? My son went to a very nice school here in Michigan and had a very good education and is not doing any of the things or very little of what he learned in school. It's what he's learned since he left school that really is what his career is becoming. So
Hmm.
I'm not sure that answers your question. There's a place for school for some people, and for some people, it's another kind of education.
Okay. And going a little bit back in time, how would you say was it for you when you were growing up in terms of perhaps lifestyle?
Hmm.
Um, what difference you see when you were a child or teenager and
Yeah.
what you see now? You have a son, obviously.
Yep.
Um, what would you say was your time better, and if yes, how? And just in general, how your
You
story
know,
was as a younger person.
I was a baby boomer. So I grew up in that generation, in that world where mom and dad were the norm. You know, you had a mom, you had a dad. Um, Dad went to work. Mom was sort of more at home, although my mom did have a job, but not a full-time job. She didn't support the family. Financially, there just never seemed to be those stresses and strains that I think people experience now. You know, financially, things were more comfortable, I think, for people in general. Um, Again, some more traditional ways of approaching things. You know, men did certain things, women did certain things. That's just the way it was when I grew up. Although I felt like nothing was off limits to me. You know, if I wanted to become, actually, I started school studying architecture. If I wanted to be an architect, I could do that. If I wanted to be an engineer, I could, you know, my parents never limited me in what opportunities I could have. So I was very fortunate and they encouraged me. Um, we didn't have as much exposure to what social media brings into people's lives. And so there wasn't, I didn't feel like there was as much, I didn't feel as judged. I didn't feel as worried about things that young people worry about now, you know,
Hmm.
appearance and lots of comparison. I think social media brings a lot of comparison. And sure, we had that in our own small social circles. But the scope of it these days, I think, is very, very hard for young people. They're constantly living in a world of he's better, she's better, and comparing. And so I think it was easier when I grew up, but I think it's more exciting now.
Hmm. And going
Yeah.
back and touching that social media aspect, would you say it's destroying people these days? Do you think it has a worse influence? Obviously, the groups, smaller groups, as you said in the past,
Yeah.
were maybe bullying each other, doing some pranks, etc. But
Yeah.
would you say it's destroying kind of personalities these days,
I think it
and has a
has
bad
the,
influence overall on people?
I think it could be used that way. I also think it can be used to make things better for people. I think what's missing aside from this whole education of how to manage money and adult and do all those things is people learning to sort of be self-aware. That's a big concept that I am focused on and the things that I help with people with. Just because you see things, just because you hear things, just because you think things doesn't mean it's your reality and it doesn't mean it's good for you. And yet
Hmm.
we are also caught up in seeing things. Things are being presented to us, pushed to us to make us feel a sense of desire and wanting and longing and comparison. And we're not good at managing those what were those ideas. I think that's where the problem is. If people could look at that stuff and say, that's not for me, that's not me, that's not reality, that's not what makes me happy, or that's not what I need, they could just pass by some of these ideas. But when you're very young and your prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed, it becomes very difficult to manage all of that information, and it makes people feel bad about themselves. So yes, I think social media can be that way. I also think it can be a place to learn about all kinds of amazing and wonderful things, and how it is cool to be different, and how you can express yourself as a different person. So
Hmm.
it's all out there. It's just how people deal with it, in my opinion.
Okay. And you said your parents provided you with a lot of opportunities so you can try a lot of things
Yes,
when you were
yes,
younger. Would
yes.
you say women had it harder back then to achieve things or get things where they want to be, or is it much easier now for women to be at certain positions, do certain jobs, have a bigger influence? How would you compare it to your times when you were
Yeah.
younger?
Well, again, and I grew up on the East Coast of the United States, in the New York and New Jersey area, in sort of a middle class environment. So that frames, how I saw life. Where I grew up, again, my parents said, anything you want to do, you can try. But I think there was really this underlying thinking that you'll marry a man who will take care of you. So whatever you decide to do, it's really not that important, because eventually you're going to get married, and maybe somebody will take care of you, or they'll be the breadwinner. So I wanted to be my own breadwinner. I mean, that sounded like really good to me and really powerful to me. And so my parents encouraged me to do those things. But like when I got to school, to go to college, and I wanted to be an architect. I was the only woman in all my classes, and the teachers
Okay. Well.
really weren't too fond of seeing me there. They just didn't think that that was where a place where I belonged. So it was still a little bit, men work and earn money, and women kind of do nice things, soft things along the line. Um, I think by the time I got to law school, I felt like things had pretty much evened out, that women were considered to be strong, men were considered to be strong. You could do anything. Achievement was possible for both men and women. And I really will say, maybe I'm just lucky, but I didn't feel a lot of discrimination against me for being a woman at that
Mhm.
point on. And in the architecture program, I definitely did. But as I got older, um, I didn't feel that. And today, I don't feel it that much. Now, again, I may be
Mhm.
rare case. I'm a lawyer. I never felt like anyone said you can't be a lawyer because you're a woman, or you're lesser of a lawyer because you're a woman. Never felt that way. But that's my experience. It may not be the same for everybody.
Okay. Um, what would you say? Who was the biggest influence in your life, and why?
My mom was a huge influence, because she had a way of seeing things that was different than what everybody else was seeing. It was almost like everybody else was looking at something, and she took one step to the side and saw it from another perspective. And I loved that about her. She could always see what other people weren't seeing. She was very creative. She was way ahead of her time, as far as she used to meditate, do yoga, exercise. I mean, my mom, if she was alive now, would be close to 100. So we're talking a
Oh
long
wow.
time ago. So she was hugely influential on me. Um, my brother, I have two brothers, but one of my brother was a lawyer. He was also influential on me, because I watched how he managed his life and what he did, and that's what led me to go in that direction. And other than that, I mean, there's lots of people, both my parents, but I just a lot of I read a lot. I read a lot. I went, I love to learn. So there's constantly I'm running into people and ideas that influence me along this journey.
Mhm. Okay. You said you read a lot. Any particular books you would say someone should read? You would recommend any recent or in the
Well,
past books?
yeah. Sure. Like I said, I'm currently on kind of a journey of self improvement, which I think we all should be on that journey, helping other people with self improvement. And so I think there's a book, in fact, I have it behind me here because it's an important book in my whole philosophy called Positive Intelligence. Another book called Emotional Intelligence. Um, I got to look at my bookshelf as we're sitting here. Let's see. Um, oh, all right. I'll put my list up on my phone. Again, things that are about dealing with emotions, getting to know yourself, learning how to manage your feelings and your emotions, learning how to be a leader. Those are some other important skills that some people are going to want to have if that's the direction that they're taking in their life. I've got a whole bookshelf full of books. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, that's a really
Well, I'm going to
interesting
mention one
thing
more.
because,
One more book, I
pardon?
wanna give you the name. This one was really Emotional Agility. This is
Okay.
written by, a woman named Susan David, and she's a PhD. That book was very, very fundamental in me learning to be more self-aware and manage my mind better. Okay, go on.
Okay. No, 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 that's actually great because you touched a topic that's quite trending or very often talked about online. It's about dealing with emotions. A lot of people, they don't know how to deal with emotions.
Right.
Many people have depressions. Would you have any advice for younger people how to deal in those situations? Where to um, maybe not necessarily seek advice because there are probably places where they can go to, but
Yeah.
where to start to
Yeah.
deal with the emotions because you're kind of in the middle of exploring the world, learning things. What would you say your tip would be for the younger people to deal with
I think
emotions?
And again, I think when you're in those ages between maybe 18 and 25, some of this is extra challenging. However, something that I would tell people who are trying to sort of manage emotions, manage their lives, the very first thing is to sort of get to know yourself. Get to really know yourself. What are your values? And when I coach people, that's what I always start with. Let's identify what's truly, truly important to you and why, and then look at how are you incorporating that into the rest of your life. Because generally when you're having negative emotional experiences, something's out of line. Maybe you value relationships and the relationships that you are involved in are not healthy relationships. Maybe you value health and yet your friends want to go out every night and get high. Some, so I
Hmm.
try to help people. The very basic thing is to, what are your values? And I did this exercise with a young person a few weeks ago. And, the person, one of the things I said was, I want to be rich. Well, that's not really the value. Let's peel that open. What does rich mean to you? Well, I can have anything I want. Okay, why is that good? Well, then I don't have to worry. So you peel it down to really what that person wanted is something that gives them security and stability. Money
Okay.
happens to be one of those things. But if security and stability are something that you value very highly, then as you navigate
Hmm.
life and come up against choices, you're going to want to ask yourself, is this adding to my security and stability? Or is this distracting from my security and stability? And what can I do about it?
Yeah, yeah.
And I
Okay.
think, yeah, go ahead.
Um, you touched it. You said about being rich would eliminate a lot of problems, and I think partially going back to the social media environment, I think we are quite overwhelmed with content that is really influencing the younger generation. That you have to
Yes.
be rich, successful, and the real values are in the monetary aspects rather than really helping others, being happy about little things, and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it's quite interesting to hear that. But I think going back to that topic of social media, does kind of have a bad influence on these areas where people are feeling lost, going through emotions,
Right.
because they're seeing those beautiful looking people, handsome guys, beautiful women, yachts, supercars, and things like that,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
kind of kills those real values they should be looking at and or taking away from the home, really, when
Right.
parents or families taught them. So I think yeah, it's very important, I think, to communicate that materialistic things wouldn't change anything, or if they would, only for short term, I think.
Again, in the world that I was growing up in, it wasn't social media, but there was a lot of magazines. My mom was very into, and her friends were very into all these fashion magazines. So in a similar way, you just constantly saw pictures of beautiful people with beautiful things, living beautiful lives, and I wanted that, and I
Hmm.
did. I will tell you that over my life, I've
Yeah.
accumulated a lot of expensive things. I enjoyed those things, but here at this point in my life, as you, eventually they don't fill that feeling.
Yeah.
It's nice to have nice things. I'm not going to say it's not, but they're not going to fill that sense of I have a fulfilling life. They're not going to give
Hmm.
you that feeling that I have you got to figure out who you are and what you need before you start accumulating things, because they're probably not going to make you happy if they don't really resonate with what you want for yourself.
Yeah.
Values
Yeah.
are values are really, really central to kind of getting your life on track and having
Hmm.
direction.
Okay. And what would you say is a habit that has had a positive impact on your life, and how did you develop it?
Okay. It's gonna sound kind of woo woo. I don't meditate all the time. I do meditate, and I've tried for years to learn how to meditate, and it just didn't land with me because I was just too type A. I was too much in a hurry to stop. But I learned how to do these attentiveness or awareness exercises, and I do them every day. I start in the morning with a 30-minute one, and then during the day I'll do other ones. And all it is really working with my mind to control what I focus on.
Hmm.
So it could be something as simple as I'm drinking my cup of coffee and I'm truly, for at least 2 to 3 minutes, focusing on the smell, the taste, the warmth. And if my mind starts to wander off, yeah, but I got a meeting. No, 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 no. It's mindfulness stuff, you know. But to train my brain how to go where I want it to go, so that when it starts to want to run off and be unhappy or upset or compare or angry, whatever, whoa, 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 I'm in control of the brain. I'm going to bring it back to something right in front of me, with using one of my senses, and it centers you, it calms you, and it gives you more space to then, okay, now how do I want to deal with this situation? Maybe I don't have to be angry. Maybe I don't have to yell. Maybe there's another way to handle whatever it is that's going on. So this has been very, very beneficial to me, and it's really changed me into a much calmer, more focused, kinder person.
Hmm.
Just learning how to to do these brain exercises and manage my mind.
Okay, interesting, very interesting.
Yeah,
And in your own opinion, what would you say is the key to a successful and fulfilling life? We touched on different aspects. You said values, and not
yeah.
maybe materialistic things to start with. But in your own opinion, own words, what would you say would that be?
Again, I'm going to come back to really knowing yourself and loving yourself, which I know is hard for some people, but knowing yourself, loving yourself, and allowing yourself to continually grow and explore. And if you make mistakes or you run into roadblocks or hurdles, keep going. Just
Hmm.
keep going. In a not because you're being pushed by fear, but because you're excited about what's out there and you're being pulled by the opportunities. that you can experience. And I think that
Mm.
creates a very fulfilling life.
Okay. And what keeps you motivated to keep going when things get really tough then?
I love to be creative. And I think almost all of us are creative in one way or another. My creativity may be in writing and creating visual things, or solving problems. But I think most of us have some kind of creative aspect. And when I'm having a hard time moving forward or I'm feeling stuck, I will do something creative and learn. Create, I learn new things and I try to do things that are creative. And that's kind of what keeps my energy high, keeps me going.
Okay. And the most important lesson you've learned in life that you would want
Oh,
to pass to other younger people, is there anything
yep.
that you could share?
My mother told me at a very early age, don't take yourself so seriously. Learn to laugh at yourself. And I think that's a huge, important lesson. Don't take
Hmm.
yourself so seriously. Don't take
Great.
yourself so seriously. Learn to laugh at yourself and find some lightness.
Mm.
That was
I
a
think
lesson I've
I have to
always.
keep reminding myself every day on a daily basis about this because sometimes we do take ourselves too serious. We are worried in general what other people would think of us, and there's this barrier aspect where people would want to do something, but they are kind of shy and always think about
Yeah,
others. What would they think
yeah,
about me doing certain
right.
things?
Yeah.
And it's kind
Judgment
of
is a huge barrier. Judgment of self, judgments of others keeps a lot of us from accomplishing and enjoying our lives because we're so worried about the judgment. And it's not necessary. It's really not
Mhm.
necessary.
Okay. And tell me, perhaps maybe what you're doing now. I think you did mention that you are starting a
Yeah.
new position in May.
Yeah. So
So tell me maybe something about what you're currently involved in, and maybe some advice to people who may want to go into that route of,
sure.
your industry, your experience, etc.
Okay. Well, as I mentioned before, I have an undergraduate degree in design, and I did that for a while, and then I went back to school in my mid 30s. So change is always an option if you want to change course. Went back to school, got a law degree, and went into an area of law where I do estate plans and work with senior people. Well, I'm a senior now, but at the time, work with people to help them with legal matters that come up as we age. Okay. And I loved it. And I loved it. And I worked very, very hard for a very long time. And I had my own practice and I burned out because I'm a workaholic. And I just didn't know when to stop. So I burned out. I had to step away because ethically I felt like, I really shouldn't be practicing law with my head so scrambled. And during the time I stepped away, I learned a lot about some of these things that I've been talking about: values, self awareness, managing emotions. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is so useful. This helps me so much to manage my life better that I went to get trained how to be a coach so I could talk to other lawyers about how to use these skills and this knowledge to make their lives more fulfilling, to make them feel more connected with themselves. And so now I have a coaching practice. I coach lawyers, and next month, I'm going back into the practice of law because I feel like I have
Okay.
fully recovered from the burnout experience from these things that I learned. And I'm going to start practicing law again. So part time I'll practice law and part time I will be a coach. I think the law is a very empowering thing for people to know. You can go to
Hmm.
law school and not be a lawyer, but the knowledge that you gain in law school is very useful. So I would encourage anybody who's interested in law school to consider that. The area of coaching is fascinating. It's a new profession. So it goes from the bizarre to the profound. There's a place for everybody. It's a little bit unregulated right now. So again, if you're interested in it, certainly look at it, pursue it, find out about it. or maybe you'd like to be coached. That's another thing that people might find useful, is to have somebody work with them as a coach to help them navigate some of their challenges.
Okay. And do you have a pro tip how to recognize early enough the signs of a burnout and work on it? So, yeah, what would you say
Yeah,
as a coach? Maybe
absolutely.
just one tiny tip.
Well, I think if you start to feel anxiety is a start down that road. If you start to feel disconnected from and cynical, angry, your personality is shifting into you're being short-tempered, you wake up Mondays and you always hate going to work. These are signs that there's a disconnect and you are heading on the course towards burnout. And it's
Mhm,
time to figure out what are you going to do about it before you do get to burnout. Burnout's a difficult thing. It physically and mentally destroys you. And it's
mhm,
took me 3.5, 4 years to kind of feel whole again. So those are some signs. If you're starting to languish and your focus is off, you're feeling very agitated, angry, and cynical, these are signs of burnout.
okay, great. Thank you for sharing. And probably finally, if you could go back in time and relive one moment from your childhood or teenage years, what would
Yeah.
that be?
If I could do what with that moment?
Relive one moment from your childhood or teenage years, what would that be? Is there any moment you
Oh
can
my goodness.
remember?
Well, it's probably gonna have to be the day my son was born. That's an amazing, amazing experience to become a parent, and
It
I
is,
would
it
do that
is.
one over and do it the same. It's a real wonderful opportunity that some of us get. So I would do that one over.
For me, it was really stressful, so I only remember some bits and bobs there. So, but
You'll
yeah,
see
I have
as
sympathy
you
for
get
older women.
older.
They're going through that, and yeah, I do kind of admire older women going through that entire, journey and giving birth. But yeah, I probably have to. I always look at the pictures and then try to put the puzzles together what that moment was because I can't remember a lot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was a
Very
great moment.
stressful.
Yeah.
But very happy, very a wonderful moment, I must say. Yeah. Great. Is there anything else you would want to share? You think probably maybe I haven't asked, but maybe you would want to say something in addition to my
Yeah.
questions.
Well, I think the biggest thing, and this was a lesson I learned the hard way, and I think a lot because, again, of this social media making us think that you have to go from zero to perfect, that's how life is. It's not that way. It's really not. I have fallen and stumbled in my life many times and had to pick myself up. Don't be afraid to ask for help. A lot of the things that happened in my life that were very difficult, um, people helped me to move over hurdles, move around things that were difficult for me. And it was so valuable. There's nothing wrong with asking for help, and it can be very useful. And it can help you get unstuck or out of a place where you're feeling very unhappy and depressed.
Hmm.
And that help could be a coach, it could be a therapist, it could be someone in your, religious persuasion who talks to young people. It could be a friend, although that's a hard thing for a friend to really help with those kinds of problems if you're feeling really depressed or anxious or unhappy. But the people who are out there to help you can make a huge difference in your life. And I would
Hmm.
just encourage people, don't be afraid to ask for help. It really is valuable and useful.
Great. Fantastic. Susan, I really wanted to thank you very much for your time today, sharing all your
Thank
wisdom.
you. Yeah,
And yeah, really wonderful time I've spent here. I hope we get to speak again. And yeah,
great.
you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Nice to talk to you today.
Thank you.